ain't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Eevee and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. All right, today's video, I'm going to be talking about Ultimate Black Panther, written by Brian Hill, with art by Stefano Caselli, and color by David Curiel. For those wondering, like, how all this is set up, like, what do you need to know to go in to this comic? The first thing you need to know kind of going into this is that we really haven't seen Black Panther in Jonathan Hickman's new Ultimate Marvel Comics universe, really. We see him very briefly in the Ultimate Universe one-shot that came out not too terribly long ago, but for the most part, we really don't see him appear across any of it because Wakanda, during the Ultimate Invasion story arc, the Wakanda of the new Ultimate Marvel Comics universe, which is Earth 6160, they are still an isolated nation. They have not revealed their presence to the world yet, though we have seen the new villains that Black Panther is going to be going up against in the series, and it's the combined might of Ra and Khonshu. Now, what makes this incredibly interesting is that in the past, when we have seen Ra and Khonshu put into the same area as one another in the Earth 616 main line of Marvel Comics, it's usually very antagonistic. However, in this case, Khonshu and Ra are working together in tandem, and we've actually seen this over the course of the Ultimate Invasion series, that both Ra and Khonshu, or rather avatars for these two Egyptian gods, they have been working alongside the Maker and were a part of his cabinet as he had overseen the creation of Earth 6160. But in the wake of the Maker being locked away at the end of Ultimate Invasion, this has left Khonshu and Ra to carry the bag, and right now they are waging open warfare and genocide across the African continent because that was their area of control that the Maker had given them, and they are operating with impunity right now. So who is going to step up and protect the people of Africa? Because right now, the only person who under normal circumstances that would be able to do this would be Black Panther. But this time around, in the Earth 6160 iteration of Black Panther comics, that is no longer the case. Before I get into who is going to be helping protect Wakanda in the wake of Ra and Khonshu's attacks, which, mind you, these are straight up genocides. These aren't Ra and Khonshu marshaling their power and attacking another army. They are going after civilians, destroying entire cities of people who have ultimately done nothing outwardly wrong to anyone. They're just living their lives and existing. And the people who they haven't killed, it seems they're taking as captives and quite possibly enslaving them. All the while, the Black Panther of Wakanda is doing nothing. Now, the Black Panther of this universe is still T'Challa, but this is a T'Challa whose father, T'Chaka, is still alive. We don't see Queen Ramonda, so it's very likely, if you read any of the Jonathan Hickman Ultimate Spider-Man, you probably realize that, well, if one character is alive and we don't see another one, it's very likely that the character that normally would be alive is dead. In the Jonathan Hickman Spider-Man series, Uncle Ben is the one who's still alive. It's Aunt May who was killed off. This might be more of the same, but King T'Chaka has recently given up the throne and passed it on to his son, and this in a lot of ways kind of mirrors some incidents from the MCU, which is kind of interesting considering that the original Ultimate Marvel Comics line, it was borrowed from very heavily in regards to the MCU. The MCU never really adapted Earth 616 stuff by and large until recently. Almost everything you saw in the MCU early days was Ultimate Marvel being adapted, and this is what's done here. And it's largely because, while yes, King T'Chaka is alive, he dies in about roughly the same fashion as he does in Captain America Civil War. And just like in that movie, this is what galvanizes T'Challa to do something that under normal circumstances he wouldn't, and that is take Wakanda into open war with the combined might of Ra and Khonshu. Only in this particular instance, he only really points out Moon Knight, who technically, yes, we have seen Moon Knight, but we haven't seen Moon Knight the way we're used to seeing Moon Knight. So I'm curious to see how that part of it is going to play out. But everything in T'Challa's life, as I mentioned earlier, with King T'Chaka being alive, at least up until, you know, the closing pages of this comic, a lot of stuff is different. In this universe, he's not married to Storm or even has a relationship with Storm. He's married to Okoye, which seems to be a throwback to the Christopher Priest era of Black Panther when the Dora Milaje was introduced. The Dora Milaje were supposed to be wives in waiting. They were supposed to be women who protected the king, but eventually the king would pull one of them from their ranks and take as his wife, and that's exactly what happens here. We see that the Okoye of this universe, she is still a general of the Dora Milaje, but she is a former general, but now she is the queen, and technically the traditions of Wakanda are still very rigid in this universe, same as they were in the Earth 616 era, where while Storm was queen, she didn't really have as much power as a queen, or at least rather what you would suspect a queen would have. She actually had less, and the king still called the shots, and that is something that is very much the case here. Another thing that is noteworthy in this first issue of Ultimate Black Panther #1 regarding T'Challa and Okoye's relationship is that they don't seem to be having a good time in this relationship. If you just look at the first scene where we're witnessing these characters' relationship in action, the first thing I took notice of was the fact that they are not sleeping in the same bed. They're in the same room, no doubt, but the same bed? No. That is a clear sign something's not right. And as you kind of look at and pay attention to Okoye's body language, it becomes incredibly clear that she's not happy. This isn't a marriage of love, this is a marriage of convenience. The character Shuri, while she is not a part of the Dora Milaje in this, she is in fact the woman-at-arms, serving about roughly the same role that Okoye serves in the Earth 616 universe. She also seems to have her genius level intellect and is very adept at building and engineering all sorts of technological marvels, but she also is a bit more hot-headed than what Shuri would normally be. Shuri is usually, while she is a more bombastic character than T'Challa, she is usually a lot more cool, calm, and collected, even more so than T'Challa. She's a lot more laid-back character, and in this instance, she is definitely the hothead in this. She wants to take the fight to Ra and Khonshu, even though she technically doesn't know who exactly it is that's attacking them. The throne of Wakanda doesn't learn that it's Ra and Khonshu until the very end of it. What's going on with her as far as her attitude towards fighting against Ra and Khonshu, it is very reminiscent of a couple of things. If you remember the early days of Shuri, during Reggie Hudlin's time writing Black Panther, she kind of reminds me more of that version of Shuri, even before she had become Black Panther. Shuri was a lot more hot-headed. She tended to act about roughly this way, and I kind of feel like in a lot of ways, just in one issue, this Ultimate Black Panther series is kind of trying to take T'Challa back to maybe a time before people had grown to love him because of the MCU, back when fans didn't really know who he was or any of the characters connected to him. Her anger in this situation even kind of took me back a little bit to Black Panther Wakanda Forever, when she was struggling with her anger towards the death of her mother at the hands of Namor. But she wants to take this fight to whoever it is that is harming Africa's people, because it's not just Wakanda who's being threatened, it's the entire continent. T'Challa is not doing anything. He doesn't want to wage open war. He wants to take the fight to whoever it is that's harming his people, but at the end of the day, he doesn't want to risk open war, and Shuri is more than willing to do so. And we can also tell that another character that we're introduced to, one who has an Earth 616 equivalent, a woman by the name of Abini, she is the captain of the Dora Milaje, and for all intents and purposes, taking Okoye's place as the leader of the group. And the Dora Milaje are even depicted as being more warlike and more adversarial and aggressive in this universe as opposed to Earth 616. In the Earth 616 universe, it's not to say the Dora Milaje don't want to fight, but they don't necessarily go out seeking fights. Their duty is to protect the king, and even more recently, as the Dora Milaje have evolved in Earth 616, they have grown to have more autonomy over themselves and ultimately fight to protect their own region of Wakanda as opposed to protecting the king of Wakanda. So this part right here is pretty interesting. I mean, in a lot of ways, this comic it does retread a lot of ground. I've seen a lot of people say this in their reviews, different websites and stuff. I've seen people say that, oh yeah, this basically is just kind of doing, I guess, Black Panther before, Wakanda became a democracy as opposed to a monarchy. That's basically not an unfair assessment. One thing I will say that is incredibly different though with this is that we're reintroduced to the Earth 6160 version of Killmonger. And Killmonger, in this particular instance, he is a freedom fighter. He doesn't appear to be a villain per se. He is actually the one who is taking the fight to Ra and Khonshu before T'Challa ever even so much as raises a claw in their direction. Killmonger is the one who is fighting against Ra and Khonshu's forces using an axe that is very reminiscent of Yarnbjorn, the axe that is largely associated with Thor. When he throws it, it comes back to him, and I do not believe this is actually Yarnbjorn proper, but it is just very reminiscent of Yarnbjorn. I do believe this is something that is very much Wakandan in origin, and we also have to remember Thor doesn't have a monopoly on returning weapons. He also has another powerful weapon in his employ, and that is the woman he refers to as the Wind Rider. But we know that that is just another alias for Storm. We don't actually see Storm, like we don't see her full frontal in this issue, but we do see her silhouette, or more specifically, her light silhouette, because she's flashing electricity everywhere. We never actually see her face, but it's very obvious who she is supposed to be. And not only that, it seems like they have some kind of a romantic relationship between one another based on what we've seen from the solicits. So once again, this is one of those series that, while a lot of other people were very hype for this issue, I actually was not. I was actually not interested in this, and largely it's because I just don't care about the Ultimate Universe as much as everyone else does. I didn't care about it back when it was a thing, and I really don't care about it now. I was still going to give this issue a chance just to see if it was going to do anything that was going to win me over the way that Jonathan Hickman's Spider-Man did. And while Jonathan Hickman's Spider-Man won me over almost immediately from the word go, this one took a little bit of time. Like, I was enjoying the writing of Brian Hill, I was enjoying the art of Stefano Caselli, but at the same time, I was just like, man, I'm really waiting for this to get somewhere that makes more sense to me. And it finally does. The closer you get, not necessarily to the end, but like around roughly the middle part of the issue, I was like, okay, cool. I'm in, I'm on board, we're off to the races, let's go. This is one I'm gonna definitely keep up with. I don't know if I'll do videos for it every time it drops, but if there's definitely something of note, I will probably talk about it. You guessed it, obligatory channel outro time. If you're not subscribed to the channel, consider doing so. Clicking that subscribe button and tapping that notification bell ensures that you get more videos just like this one, and you don't miss any of my other content that I drop throughout the week, plus my live streams every Thursday and Saturday. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure you click that like button, keep it plus ultra, and sound off in the comments.